Let's talk about anxiety and how we can use the Ho'oponopono practice to alleviate it. If you think about it, anxiety is often focused on the future, on things that we fear might happen. Is the person that I love going to leave me? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to go broke? Am I going to be homeless? Am I going to get sick? Am I going to die? Well, yeah, one day we're all going to die. But apart from that, we really can't know what's going to happen in the future. But what happens in moments of anxiety is that we get into a kind of negative spiral where we fixate on all the terrible things that might happen and we lose sight of the reality, which is that there are hundreds of possible outcomes for any given situation that really deserve to be given just as much attention as the disaster outcome, or just as little. But even though we might know that logically, escaping from that fixation on the disaster is often easier said than done. One of the things that I've found can help is the Ho'oponopono practice. Repeating in moments of anxiety the mantra, or what some people call the Ho'oponopono prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Now, I have my fair share of anxiety. Like most parents, I worry about my daughter's safety, and when she was in her late teens, I'd drive myself crazy when she was out late at night, fixating on all the terrible things that the world can do to young women. What I found was that doing the practice in those anxious moments when she was out late at night and I didn't know where she was, would have the effect of distracting me from that mental process, that cycle of distress and anxiety that I'd worked myself into. I noticed, after repeating the phrases several times, that my thoughts would just kind of wander off in some different direction, and that spiral of disaster thinking would be interrupted. And once the cycle had been broken, I would realize that those horrific scenarios really were nothing more than constructions of my own mind. Yeah, terrible things happen to young women, yes, but really there could be any number of possible reasons that I hadn't heard from her. I would relax and switch off the panic alarm in my head. And interestingly, when I did that, more often than not, the phone would ring and it would be my daughter saying, I'm at this place, we're getting a taxi and going to that place, I'm with this person and that person, I'll be home at such and such a time, and telling me all the things I needed to hear. And the timing was always kind of interesting. I'm not claiming that there was any magic at work, but it did start to feel like more than a coincidence that when I used the practice and allowed it to alter my own thinking, very often the situation would resolve itself anyway. So using the Ho'oponopono practice allows you to have some perspective. It stops that blinkered vision in which all you can see is the worst case scenario, and makes you realize that there are countless scenarios and explanations for the things that your mind is focusing on. But it also gives you some perspective in a broader sense, in that it allows you some insight into yourself and your own tendencies, which is actually quite therapeutic. By lifting me out of the immediate anxiety that I feel, it's allowed me to observe my anxiety in a more detached way. I've come to see that the anxiety I feel in any given moment about my daughter or about my financial situation or my health is really no different from the anxiety I felt in my 20s when I was worried my girlfriend was going to leave me, or even when I was a little kid and I worried about the survival of my family, or why my mum was late to come and pick me up, or whether I was going to get in trouble at school. I came to realize that the pattern of anxiety was always the same, and that the content of the anxious thoughts was really just the story that attached itself depending on the circumstances of my life at the time. How does that help? Having that perspective means you're more able to recognize the signs. When you feel that tendency arising, that habit of imagining the worst case scenario, you're more able to see it for what it is. And when you can do that, it takes away its power to torment you. In the next video, we're going to talk some more about the Ho'oponopono practice and how you can use it to improve your life. So please hit subscribe, and I'll see you soon.